You really don't want her on your bad side.
Did you just put the ring on, or are you in the first few years of your marriage? Welcome to the First Year Marriage Show, a podcast dedicated to helping newlyweds navigate the first few years of marriage. My husband, Marcus, and I will be sharing marriage tips to help you build a strong foundation for your marriage. We believe having a strong foundation is essential to having a happy, healthy, and lasting marriage. We will also be learning from the experiences of awesome married couples who have been where you are today, taking from them lessons to help you build a strong foundation for the lasting marriage you desire. Take a deep breath, relax, learn, and enjoy the show. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the First Year Marriage Show. We hope you had an awesome weekend. We want to thank Maria and Jesse B. Forrester for leaving us a rating and review on iTunes. If you haven't left us a rating and review, you can visit firstyearmarriage.com/iTunes to leave us one. Your reviews will help this podcast to rank higher on iTunes, which will make it easier for other couples to discover this podcast. If you know any other couples who want to be guests for this podcast, or if you yourself would like to share your story, please send us a message to firstyearmarriage@gmail.com with your contact information or the contact information of the couples that you think would be a great guest and if they're interested. For all the show notes for this week's episode, visit firstyearmarriage.com/20. Have a great week.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of the First Year Marriage Show. I am Marcus Kusi, and our guests for this week's episode are Paul and Courtney Burton. Paul and Courtney have been married for a year and a half, and they live in Lynchburg, Virginia. Paul is an application developer, and Courtney is a stay-at-home wife. Paul and Courtney, thank you guys for coming on the show this week to share your experience with us. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you guys met each other?
Yeah, thank you for having us on. We met
about 3 years ago through a friend. I said he was my birthday present. She kind of introduced me to the idea of meeting Paul at my birthday party one year. And she pulled up his Facebook, and I sent him a friend request, and we started messaging back and forth there for about a week before we decided to meet up, and things just kind of went from there.
Wow. Courtney, did you send a friend request via Facebook, or was it a different?
Oh, yes.
Oh, Facebook? Oh, wow. Looks like Facebook is doing a lot of good job then.
Yeah. I was already friends with her friend, so...
That makes it a whole lot easier then.
Yes. Yeah. Especially when I'm in tech and, all concerned about security and everything.
Yeah. So, Courtney, I know you met Paul via a friend on your birthday night. After meeting him and talking with him for about a week online and then probably dating for a while, how did you know that he was the one that you actually wanted to spend the rest of your life with?
He had everything I was looking for. He had a great heart, and he loved the Lord. He was just so wonderful, and I just knew, God placed it on my heart, and we talked about it before we even started dating. We said, we both feel this way, and if we're going to go through with it and we're going to start dating and everything, we're going to go through it with the mindset that we're going to get married one day. This
is not just a casual relationship. This is a relationship with a purpose to find out if we're compatible to be married type of mindset.
We dated for about a year and fell in love.
So you guys dated for about a year, and then you decided to get married and spend your life together because you had the same values in terms of things you were expecting from the person you wanted to spend the rest of your life with.
Yes.
Paul, if you were to describe in one or two sentences, like how did you actually know, apart from dating and sharing the same values, how did you know like Courtney was the one that you actually wanted to be with?
I'm very focused when it comes to work, and she has the ability to draw me out of, just pull me away from my work. And that's something not a lot of people can do, is pull me away from work. And she had the ability to draw me away from work and show me how to have fun. That is why I love her, is because she can take a boring guy like me who can sit and code for 24 hours and show me how there's actually fun in life.
It's definitely good that, Courtney, you have that characteristics or that trait that you're able to help Paul enjoy life, because it's not about just working hard every day and not being able to play, but at least you're able to bring in that fun that he's probably been missing all his life.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, I had fun with friends, and, I was living in Lynchburg. I just graduated from Liberty, and I was working on a job, and I didn't really have any friends in Lynchburg, and so it was just really easy to get consumed and just do all work all the time. And so
he kind of got tunnel vision, and so kind of pull him away from that a little bit, and help him to relax and have some fun.
In my profession, there's a lot of long hours writing code, and so
a lot of sitting at the computer and
trying to figure out problems. I remember one day where I was sitting there working on a problem and woke up probably about 8 o'clock in the morning, and before I knew it, it was 5 o'clock at night, and I was still working on the same problem. It was just that much of a pain, and the whole day was gone. And so after meeting Courtney, I didn't have that many of those days.
That's really good then.
Yes.
So in one or two words, like how will you guys describe your first year of marriage?
The answer I have is roller coaster. There are up and downs. It's slow parts and fast parts, scary parts where you're not sure where your stomach is.
A lot of fun,
but
too.
In the end, it went by fast and it was a lot of fun.
Courtney, what word would you choose?
A learning curve, honestly. Like you said, there was a lot of ups and downs, slow parts, fast parts. It was a lot of learning of how to mesh our lives together and work with each other to make it through that first year. And a lot of learning how to have fun together and how to be serious and make decisions together.
Okay. Courtney, you want to share some of the adjustments that you went through during that first year?
Yeah, there was a lot of figuring out who was going to do what around the house there at first. Right?
Mm-hmm.
We still kind of
have trouble with that sometimes.
We do. There was learning how to do my role as a wife instead of just a girlfriend or a fiance, because you two take on a little bit more. You got to juggle more hats, as I would say. I think there was a lot of learning how we tick and, on our bad days, what we got to do to work together to get through them and lifting each other up.
And we had to balance it a lot with how I was raised. Courtney came into the mindset that she had to do everything. I was raised in a family where the kids did everything. And so I came in with the mindset that I was going to help her with a lot of stuff. And so she would say that she had to do it. And then I would say, no, let me help you. And then it was a little fun.
It's fun figuring that out.
Yeah. We're in a groove now, kind of.
So, Paul and Courtney, I want you guys to pick one issue that you guys had that whereby, Paul, you had a different upbringing and Courtney also had a different upbringing, and how you guys were able to talk together, like communicate with each other to be able to mesh the two family upbringings that you guys had together.
When we first got married and everything, we had to find a church, and we started looking when we were dating and talking about getting married and everything. And honestly, it did take us a long time to take out a church, because I was from a more traditional church, hymns, laid back environment, and he was a little bit more modern.
Yeah, I grew up in a more modern church, more contemporary, a lot of
music.
Yeah. I went to the church she was going to in Lynchburg for the first time. Kind of like the Catholic feel, where you're standing up, sitting down, kneeling all the time. It was very strange for me, but there were parts of it that I really could appreciate. And
it was a bit of a process, figuring out what we both liked and compromising on what aspects of the church we wanted and what we could give up to make our partner happy.
And how did you guys come to an agreement?
Well, it ended up we didn't choose the church. Church kind of found us.
Actually, it was kind of interesting, because the same friend who introduced us actually said, "Hey, we found this new church," and she was all excited about it. And we went and we visited with her, and
it had a lot of the stuff we were looking for.
It was a very nice fit for us.
Looks like because you guys were able to set the standards or the requirements that you guys wanted in the church. It made it easier for you guys to
Yes.
get into that church, because once you went for the first time, you were like, oh, this is what we're looking for, and this is what we think we want to be at.
And also, the whole thing about church, in addition to all the learning and stuff, is the fellowship. And having people there that we knew was also a big plus.
So during your first year, like, what kind of struggles did you guys go through, and how did you guys like overcome them?
Probably the biggest struggle I personally went through is thinking about it being us together, making decisions that impact both of us, not just me. I'm still having trouble with it sometimes, just because I just don't fully take into aspect that this is something that will affect her as well as me.
He's getting better at it, though.
Learning how to make decisions in the scope of both of us, that every little thing I do may impact how things are between us, just decisions that make it work, even decisions that make it work. The stuff that I have to do for work, I have to remember that I can't just agree to anything anymore. I have to bring it back and talk with Courtney and make sure that it's something that she's okay with, that we don't have something else going on, and then the whole being financially responsible. Finances are not just about me anymore. When I go into a tech store, I like to buy things, and I don't do it as much anymore, just because I have this gnawing in the back of my head every time. You know, that money could go for something else that you really need as a family. And I'm like, arr, but it's true. And so I used to be very spendy when it came to my electronics. And so that's one of the things that I've had to get used to, is not having the most up-to-date computer or the most fancy, whatever. Because in reality, that has no long-term gain for our family. Those are my big things I've had to work with.
So, Paul, was there a moment in time that you actually had a conflict with Courtney about how to spend your money?
I don't think we've ever had a conflict about how to spend our money. As a general rule, we're both very conscious about how we spend our money. We don't really like to spend our money on kind of things that aren't necessary. I think we both learned that pretty quick, that being in this kind of position, you can't spend your money on the frivolous, non-necessary stuff. Because there's a lot of stuff, expenses that come up just being part in a family. I mean, before we got married, I didn't have life insurance, health insurance, vision, dental, all this other stuff. And then there's rent and then water and all the utilities and everything. And you're like, the money disappears pretty quick just on the necessities. And then plus we both have a lot of student loan debt. And so we're trying to be very careful. We made a decision early on that we were going to work on paying down our debt before we make any big decisions like house or anything. So I think as a general rule, we've been pretty much in sync when it comes to spending money.
That's really, really good. So, Courtney, was there any struggle that you had during that first year at all?
We didn't really struggle and fight so much. It was a lot of learning. Personally, for me, it was learning how to be a wife again.
Not again, but
well,
yeah.
Again, as in I've already mentioned it. Not again as yeah.
Yeah.
We had a couple tiffs over, chores and everything. Who's going to do what around the house? But as for big fights, really, it was an easy year, which is a big blessing.
That is really good. I'm glad you guys are saying you had kind of an easy year, because the first year is usually not easy for a lot of couples, and it sometimes leads to couples deciding to get divorced because of the tension and fights that they have continually.
And I think part of that was because before we even got married, we had made a whole lot of decisions. I mean,
we had laid the groundwork, really. We had talked about everything and discussed it leading up to the months for the marriage, and we had everything kind of set how we were going to do things before we even signed the papers and said I do.
I mean, one of the first questions in the very beginning was the whole money situation, because, money is such a big part of being in a part of a family. It's one of the biggest causes of, like you said, divorce. And pretty much when I brought it up with Courtney, she was like, you handle the money. And then we just made decisions. Yeah, we're not going to get a house until we have our student loan debt paid off. And we're going to be very careful with what we do in how we spend. And also, both of us are kind of in a position where, except for my electronics, we don't like to go shopping a lot. So
your electronics and my craft store.
So there we go.
That's really good.
But we did make the decision early on to hit some of the big struggles.
Courtney, I wanted to ask you this question. You talked about how you had to learn to be a wife. What was that whole change or transition like from being girlfriend to fiancé to wife like?
Well, when you're a girlfriend, it's more, you hang out and you're kind of there for each other. But as you go into that role where you're a wife, you got to learn a little bit more responsibility in the relationship, I think. You got to learn how to take your husband's word and not always blindly follow it, but, be that submissive wife that says, okay, you're the head of our household and I love you and I'm going to respect your decisions.
Now, on the flip side, as the husband, you have to be able to say, hey, you have an opinion. I am open to your opinion as well. That's one of the things that we both had to struggle with, her in accepting the decisions, but mine and also being to listen to her opinion.
It's a lot of being respectful to my husband. And even when I don't agree with the decisions he makes, I have to be respectful in how I tell him that I don't agree, but I also kind of have to follow that as well. Just give him my concern and then say, but I trust you.
Wow. It looks like you guys really talk a lot about how you wanted to treat each other before you even got married and how you wanted to live together as a married couple, which is really good. Like in our last week's episode, we had an interview with Mark and Mary Oates, and they talked about how they spent a lot of time in preparing to get married. And so when they got married, it made their first year a whole lot easier because they had talked about all the different things that they wanted to do in their first year of marriage or when they got married as a husband and wife.
Yeah, and one of the things that really helped direct those conversations was our premarital counseling. We got set up with a professional premarital counselor, and he kind of helped point us in these areas that a lot of couples have issues with and said, you need to make decisions in these areas. And so he was able to walk us through, teach us the whole thing that she and I have different communication areas. I communicate in kind of a blue realm where I'm male and I have the way I think, and she's the pink realm where she's female and she interprets everything through her communication stuff. That really helped point us in the direction of these are the things that you have to think about before you get married.
Mm-hmm. That's pretty awesome because with our marriage, even though we talked a lot about we talked a lot before we got married, like we realized in our first year, like communication was a big issue for us, and it was how we realized that men and women communicate differently, that we're able to solve a lot of the issues that we're having. And I'm glad that you guys are also bringing it up because if anybody's listening to us right now that they're married or they just got married or they're about to get married and they're having issues, one of the things that you can easily look at is how you guys communicate with each other. Guys, you might think that, this is what your wife means by saying XYZ, but it might not be what she actually means. She might mean something completely different. So it's best to just talk with each other and try to explain things as much as possible so you don't assume anything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And one of the things we had to learn early on was when we hear something that through our filters that sounds really not right to us, we have to take an instant and go, my spouse wants the best for us. And we have to give them the benefit of the doubt, communicate and talk, try to delve into that little thing. Because
sit down and say, okay, did you really mean this? Because this is how I interpreted that.
And really talking about how you interpret something kind of gives the other person a feel for how their filtering actually kind of works. And so one of the big things that we learned early on is in Courtney's family, the word obnoxious means something completely different than it did in my family. Where in my family, it was just pleasantly crazy. and a lot of fun. While in her family, it's annoying
it means annoying
and a pain.
Obnoxious.
And so when she was being crazy and fun, I'd call her, say she was being obnoxious, and she would all of a sudden get upset thinking that she was being annoying. And so it was one of the things I had to learn early on was I had to drop obnoxious from my vocabulary because it meant something really bad to her. And so I had to redefine obnoxious as kind of like a border between crazy fun and annoying.
Then on my side of things, with this example of obnoxious, I had to learn that our meanings are different, and I can't take offense to that when he says it to me because he means it in a cute way and in a loving way.
Yeah, that's definitely true. So I know in the first year, you guys talked about having a lot of fun and learning a lot of things about each other. What are some of the exciting moments that you guys had during that first year that you think when you share with our listeners or anybody who's listening to right now will be able to laugh out loud and really put a smile on their faces?
Well, one of the things we learned from the counselor early on was the fact that even after you get married, even when you've been married for 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, it's always good to have date nights. And we've had some really fun date nights. And one of the ones that come to mind is one that really I surprised Courtney with, and she looked forward to for a couple months. One of her favorite chefs on Food Network is Alton Brown, and she loves good eats. And so he started doing a tour this last year, and it was going to show in Richmond. And I surprised her. I think it was close to Valentine's Day with tickets to go see Alton Brown. And it wasn't going to be until later in the year. So she pretty much had to wait. And so it was amusing. Every time she would remember that Alton Brown, she was going to go see Alton Brown, she'd get all giddy and fangirl. And it was a lot of fun to watch. Really and then the day it came, and we had a pretty scary experience where we actually got lost in Richmond. But even then, with the downside of getting lost in Richmond and being
because somebody wouldn't ask for directions,
we still had a lot of fun. It's really fun when I can see her as happy as she was that night.
Wow, that's really awesome. I'm glad you were able to buy the tickets in advance and keep her waiting for that, because I know it kind of brings the excitement of looking forward to something. Just like as a kid looking forward to Christmas Day, you know the presents are waiting for you. You're just waiting for that day to open them. So
really something else that really puts a smile on my face. There's a big height difference between Paul and I. I am 5'2", and all of my family is, around my height. While Paul here is 6'8".
Wow.
He's really tall. His family's tall. So when I go over to my in-laws' house, his family's house, I'm the shortest one there, and I kind of feel like a dwarf. But then again, on the flip side, when we go to my family's house, everything's short, and he's always ducking around ceiling fans
I feel like
through doorways.
I feel like a giant.
It always puts a smile on my face. And even when we go to, the grocery store, there's always somebody who walks up to him and goes, can you help me get this off the top shelf?
Or do you play basketball? Or
Yes.
Wow. Looks like you guys had a lot of fun during that first year.
Yep.
Yeah. So you guys have been married for a year and a half. I know with marriage, one of the best things that anybody who wants to have a successful marriage or a great marriage or lasting marriage has to do is to continually pour themselves into resources that will help them improve their marriage. What are some of the resources that you guys have used that has really impacted your marriage?
Honestly, I think the thing that helped us most and helped prepare us most was the premarital counseling. He brought up a lot of issues that we hadn't even thought of before. And it really helped prepare us and set the stage so that we could take those first few steps and be strong in it.
When we announced to my family that we were going to get married, my dad actually said that he would make the contribution where he would pay for a professional premarital counselor. He said that he wanted us to get the extra benefits of somebody that has seen a lot of the flip side, the divorce and stuff. Mm-hmm. And so it was great going into a counselor that does this for a living. And he could give us a lot of insight, and he
gave us a lot of insight in not only to what makes a successful marriage, but also what makes an unsuccessful marriage, so that we could, nip those little problems in the butt whenever they appeared, and really just have a blueprint for and a structure for how we wanted to start out.
And a lot of little stuff that he taught us that helped remind us of how important it is to make sure our relationship's first.
I'm glad you guys spend time doing that, because it's something that I wouldn't say a lot, but some couples overlook. Even if it's just, having coffee or having dinner with a married couple who has been where you want to go, just to learn from them and get some insights here and there. I think it's something that is really, really beneficial to any body looking to get married.
Yeah, and if a person can't afford the premarital counseling, it's always good to go to somebody who's you want to go to somebody that has had a very successful marriage. They're the golden anniversary type. And so you can ask them how they did it, whether it be at church or somebody at work that you trust. Ask them what they did and get insight from them. It's very important to learn from people who have been down this road a long time.
Yeah. Thank you guys very much for sharing your story with us for this week. I know a lot of couples are going to learn from it. But before we end our conversation, I want to ask you guys this last question that I ask all the couples that we have on the show. What is the one lesson or advice that you guys know now that you wish you had known before or during the first year that you guys were married?
For me, it's learning to listen. The biggest thing I've struggled with, and I still struggle with, is when I'm zoned out doing something, I have a tendency to half hear my wife. And one of the biggest things that I struggle with is being able to stop what I'm doing and focus my full attention on my wife, because, anything I'm doing, and I have no ideas of what I would do because, they're not that important. It's listening to my wife and being able to, when she says something, it's important. And it may be something small important, but it's still important because, this is the woman I'm going to be with for the rest of my life. And, you really don't want her on your bad side.
What about you, Courtney?
If I had one thing to say, is to take time and enjoy your first year. Even if you're not married yet, or if you're just married, take time to enjoy that time and to work together and knit yourselves together. Grow, learn as much as you can about your partner and your spouse. It's very important to set off right and to talk to each other, combine your lives, and you don't want to leave any little bubbles or any little trouble in there. You want to have that all hammered out so that you can go through life fairly smoothly.
Thank you guys again, Paul and Courtney, for coming on the show to share your experience with us. I know our listeners are excited learning from you guys, and they're going to take one or two lessons that they can also apply in their marriage so they can improve themselves. Before we say goodbye to you guys today, what is the best way that our listeners can contact you guys or connect with you guys if they want to say thank you for inspiring me, or thank you for sharing these insights that I can actually apply in my marriage today?
Honestly, I think the best way to go would be Facebook. We're on there a lot.
You can find me, I think it's Paul Burton, and that'd probably be the easiest way.
Okay, for Facebook?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So you guys just send me the links, and I'll put them in the show notes for our listeners, so anybody who's listening to us can go onto the show notes and be able to click and be able to connect with you guys.
Yeah, sounds good.
Paul and Courtney, thank you guys for sharing your story with us. I really appreciate it, and I'm thankful that you came to share your story with our listeners, because I know they learn a lot, and I personally learn one or two things that I'm also going to apply in my marriage so that I can become a better husband to my wife also.
Well, thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the First Year Marriage Show. To submit a question, feedback, or suggestions for the podcast, visit firstyearmarriage.com/feedback. Apply what you've learned today and build a strong foundation for the happy, healthy, and lasting marriage you desire. Enjoy your marriage. Enjoy your life.